After the Diablo 4 beta, Blizzard received a lot of feedback on what should be changed or adjusted to make the game more enjoyable. There's an article over on IGN that came out on April 14th that talks about a ton of incoming changes, and it's all based on player feedback, so they are listening to our concerns about the game. The feedback they got from the two betas, along with actual gameplay data, is giving Blizzard a way to review and make changes to Diablo 4 just in time for its official launch in June. Alright, let's get into the article. Minimizing backtracking. The first thing changing is dungeon layouts, with Blizzard saying one of the most common pieces of feedback it received was around backtracking within certain dungeons. Multiple dungeons have since been optimized to reduce this, including Caldera Gate, Defiled Catacombs, Derelict Lodge, Forbidden City, Hoarfrost Demise, Immortal Emanation, Kor Dragon Batax, Malwood, and Rhymescar Caverns. Our primary goal with the layout changes was to reduce certain kinds of backtracking which detract from the player's experience, Blizzard said. Structure objectives that previously existed down side paths have now been repositioned to the main area. It sounds like some dungeon layouts are being changed to reduce the amount of backtracking, like the ones where you had to run to another room, grab a key, then run all the way back to the main door, insert one key, then go to another room far away, grab that key, and come back to the main door again. Yeah, those ones were the ones I avoided repeating when I was farming for gold and gear. It just led to a lot of wasted time and boring gameplay. While our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. And I agree. It's not fun running through empty rooms, then backtracking to the main door that led to a boss. Having a variety of objectives can be good, but as long as you don't have to run far away from the main door. They also go on to say that some other changes within dungeons will be fixed to make it more rewarding. It says here, dungeon events will also occur much more frequently in the final version, as Blizzard has increased the chance for an event to spawn in dungeons from 10% to 60%. Quality of life improvements were made too, such as removing the wait time when depositing an animus, increasing movement speed when carrying ancient statues and equivalent items, and adding a mini-map ping to newly opened doors. There's also a minor change to some objectives, like the ones where you had to carry a key and bring it back to the main door. It's going to include a small speed bonus so that objective goes by a bit faster. While our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. We hope that providing bonuses, such as the increase to mobility while carrying certain objective items, will streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives. This adjustment is merely a starting point, and we intend to extend this philosophy to keys in a future update. And even sellers are being changed, cause in the beta, it felt like every seller had the same layout with no real reason to complete them all. I skipped a bunch of them just because they were not fun to do, but they do mention this topic in the article also. Sellers have seen similar changes as Blizzard has increased the chance for a dungeon event to occur in sellers. They also now consistently reward players with a chest upon completion. Issues have also been fixed where sellers would prematurely be marked as completed, and the guaranteed elite monster would be absent from the seller. During the beta, there was a visible difference between class balance with certain builds or skills from level 1 to 25. Blizzard is also making some changes based on beta feedback. Classes are also changing. Changes have been made to classes too. The Barbarian has received a passive 10% damage reduction. Its Whirlwind skill now deals more damage and costs more Fury, and the Double Swing enhancement refunds its full Fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. The Druid's companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. All ultimate skills have had their cooldowns reduced. The usability of Maul and Pulverize has been improved, and using a non-shape-shifting skill will now transform a druid back to their human form. The necromancer's summoned minions will die more often, meaning players will need to utilize corpses more often. Meanwhile, many Book of the Dead stat bonuses have been increased, the corpse explosion skill has had its damage reduced, and the brightness of skeletal warriors and mages has been lowered. The rogue's subterfuge skill have had their bonuses increased alongside multiple passive skills, while all imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased. Finally, the sorcerer's charge bolt's damage has been increased and the mana cost reduced. Chain Lightning's damage has been reduced, and the cooldown of the Incinerate skill's enchantment bonus has been reduced. Firewalls will also now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus, and the lucky hit chance has been increased for the Meteor skill's enchantment bonus. Whenever we introduce changes to our classes, it is with the goal of making both them and their skills feel impactful and powerful, Blizzard said. Your feedback has helped us uphold this ideal. Some players have adeptly noticed that certain skills were too powerful. One of our goals for skills is to have them be interesting to wield and interactive in terms of itemization and combat feel. We've made some changes to help in this regard, with one example being the Necromancer's minions. We've made a change that makes them more vulnerable in combat, which will make Raising the Dead a more active component of the Necromancer's gameplay. Launch is just the first step of our class balance journey, and you can expect further updates that iterate on this pillar of Diablo 4. They're also making a few more quality of life changes that should fix a few more issues. Blizzard is making further quality of life changes alongside fixing a ton of known issues in Diablo 4, like the Butcher boss becoming unresponsive. A lot of these changes are coming to the game's user interface, as Blizzard is shifting things around to allow for a better experience. This starts with the chat box now being displayed on the left side of the screen when using the centered action bar configuration. A character's stats will also now be displayed by default when players click the Materials and Stats button within their inventory, while the move and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button, while the primary attack input is mapped to a secondary button. Finally, the text is being changed to a new serif font. They're going to talk about more changes in a developer update livestream, which is set for April 20th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 7 p.m. in UK time. So stay tuned for that. Speaking of class balance, another interview on PC Gamer talks about how each class is supposed to have their own DPS build. In Diablo, everybody's sort of a damage dealer, he said. The fantasy of playing a Diablo game in many cases is making really overpowered builds and just blowing up screens full of monsters at some point and having that kind of experience. We want to make sure that those elements are preserved, where we don't have to worry about trying to create a curated set of balances between multiple players in a party that have to work in a very particular way together. So what I get from that statement is they're trying to deviate from what happened in Diablo 3's endgame content after 10 years. We got to a point in Diablo 3 where you're pretty much running a meta group, which means you have 4 players, each one playing a specific class with a specific build. So that does not mean 4 damage builds. It doesn't really work that way. You normally have 1 damage build and about 3 support builds doing 0 damage, but they support the group with damage reduction, increased damage to enemies, and crowd control, etc. So I think what they're trying to do with Diablo 4 is have all classes balanced in a way to where everyone can do about the same damage to mobs and also bosses. This way, you won't really have to run a support build. That's what I'm taking from that statement. So in a way, I kind of agree with their decision for balancing Diablo 4's builds, their skills, their legendary powers, and so on to where everyone can run a damage-based build. Hopefully, They can balance it to where every class does equal damage, so no one is left behind and no one is forced to change their class or build because it's not strong enough. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff to take into consideration when it comes to balancing out a build or a class and making it equal to other builds in the game like this. But I guess we'll see what happens in the end of Diablo 4, because in some way I don't really want to have someone being forced to play a support build if they don't want to, because in essence, in a Diablo game, it's more fun to blow stuff up than it is to run a support build. If you play Diablo for only the story, then that's okay. Enjoy it for what it offers. But if you want more to do after the story, there's things to do in search of better gear to improve on your build, like Nightmare Dungeons, Tree of Whispers, Hell Tides, and PvP zones in the open world. As you work your way to the level 100 cap, you'll gain Paragon points to spend in a giant board. From there, you can improve on certain aspects of your character. While Diablo 3's Paragon system was capped at 20,000 points, Diablo 4 will have a limit. You can then adjust the board with points to change your build in a better way. One thing I do want to make sure it's really clear is we're not trying to create a situation where players feel that they must play forever, Pipiora said. We want players who play Diablo 4 to play and enjoy the experience while they're playing the game. We want you to get to a certain point once you've reached level 100, where you've got 220 of these Paragon points you're playing with. You have all of your skill points that you've already assigned to your character, and you've got your legendary and unique items, and now it's about configuring the board exactly the way you want. So in a way, everyone can reach the same power level at some point, which should not take as long compared to Diablo 3 in reaching Paragon 20,000. But when you compare the two Paragon systems, it just means that everyone in Diablo 4 is going to be similar in power much sooner at some point. Another article on IGN also covers the battle pass during a season and how long it could take to complete. Right now, the battle pass, when you're figuring in completing the season journey alongside doing other content in the game, you're looking at roughly 80 hours worth of time invested to complete the entirety of the battle pass. To level a character to level 100 could take a little longer than that, based on how you play. He also said it's likely that you'll finish the battle pass before you reach the max level each season, which follows a broader philosophy of letting players get what they want out of the game and move on if they'd like. They're also giving players the freedom to not being forced into the end game content. If you only want to do the story mode, then that's fine. You can come back when there's an update to the story mode, or if any other activity would interest you. They're saying that Diablo 4 is not only going to focus on the end game and reaching level 100 with every character, so you can play at your own pace and choose what activities you want to do. Another interview I found was on a Korean website. They cover a bunch of topics, but I chose a few important ones. There were some concerns from the fans that a max level character would cost anywhere from 5 to 11 million gold just to respec everything. And here's the question. Are there any plans to adjust the skill reset cost? We got a lot of feedback. We'll continue to look into it. We still think the current cost level is reasonable. Since it is a game that will be a live service, adjustments may be possible after close observation of skill initialization. It will make the gold I use feel meaningful. I do think the total cost of gold to respec a fully leveled character is pretty high, unless collecting gold at the highest tier level is very sufficient. Then it's not a problem. But compared to Diablo 3, where respecing a very high level character, to reset all their Paragon points costs you absolutely nothing. And it's not just the Paragon points, but also respecing your skills costs you nothing in Diablo 3. So the fact that in Diablo 4, they're having a huge amount of cost with gold to respec everything and also respec your skills, just makes me think it's intentional because they want you to accumulate a huge amount of game time, which also includes farming gold. But I guess when the game is released and if we can finally get a good amount of gold on the highest world tier, then maybe it's not a big deal. But for now, I really don't think it should cost you anything to respec your character because you're experimenting. I mean, I guess at the low levels, it costs you almost nothing, but at the very end, it's a huge, costly procedure. But I mean, it is a lot, but I don't know. Right now, I guess we'll see what happens when the game is released, and we'll see how it goes from there. Another question talks about the druid transformation into werewolf and werebear. The druids you met in the open beta only transform when you use skills, which is different from the druids in Diablo 2 who maintained their transformations. In the future, will there be a passive or skill that is always maintained in the endgame content? There are some intentional parts. What I wanted to add while making the current version of Druid was to be able to flexibly go through bear and wolves. Among the items that can be used later, there are unique armor items that allow you to permanently remain in werewolf form. Our intention was to transform flexibly, but there are times when it's fun to deviate from the rules. One question about PvP was about the balance and power of class builds. Sometimes you become so strong that you can destroy enemies very quickly, and this might occur in PvP. Here's what they said about this topic. I am thinking about the part where the power of a certain character or skill is excessively increased and sends the opponent in a one-shot kill, and I'm trying to prevent it as much as possible. There are currently no plans for specific items or attributes for PvP. Overall, the PvP content itself may not be perfectly balanced. It's because it feels like an open world brawl. Diablo 4's PvP content itself is for slaughter rather than honor. So that's basically saying that PvP is going to be very hard to balance, and there's going to be situations where you are going to lose just getting one shot killed by enemies with their high powered builds, and so you just got to deal with it. That's how it is. I mean, I did try PvP to some extent in Diablo 3, and that's basically what it was. So it does not really surprise me. It's going to occur in Diablo 4 also. So anyways, yeah, let's move on. And the last question here is about seasons. It looks like the altars of Lilith will not be reset in each season, which is a good thing. It takes so much time going off the trail of your objective just to find all of these in every single region. It says here, stat points obtained from the altar of Lilith will not be included in the reset targets. Alright, that covers a lot of topics around the changes to Diablo 4 just in time for its release in June. As I find more topics of interest, I'll make more videos to keep you updated. Now, despite the changes to my sorcerer, it will still be my favorite class and the one I start with on launch. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.